This is the Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Alternative Talk, AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Welcome back to the Money Hour with your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, right here on 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, September 20th show, bringing in expert advice and inside knowledge on today's events in our local economy and how it can affect your money. If you are hearing my show at a different time or day, you're listening to a rebroadcast, but you can always call into the show at 1-855-400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com to ask any questions or to be connected with any of the guests that I have in studio. And right now we're talking with Scott Schaaf with Prime National with a little work and a great game plan. You can change your credit score and ultimately change your life. And I'm just excited. Scott, thank you so much for being back and, well, actually being on the phone. We don't have Scott live here because he doesn't live in Seattle. But Scott, thanks for joining us in studio.
Thanks, Tina. It's great to be here.
And a little background of Scott. Scott has over 10 years experience in the credit repair industry, currently works with banks across the country and has helped hundreds of people reestablish their credit. Prime National is a lending credit repair company is a leading credit repair company in the nation with an impeccable A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, fully licensed with the Department of Justice, bonded for $100,000 AAA rating with the Business Consumer Alliance, and offers 100% money back guarantee. So, Scott, let's go ahead and start out today with what's going on with credit industry with the recent bill introduced, Fair Credit Reporting Improvement Act 2014, and the drastic changes that it could have if it passed.
Yeah, this bill was just introduced about a week ago by Representative Maxine Waters, Democrat out of California. So it is still just a bill, but it would make drastic changes to over 650 million consumer credit reports and their credit scores almost overnight. There's a lot to it, but the main highlights are any adverse real estate loans that were deemed to be caused by deceptive lending practices would have to be removed. And normally, we all know that items get removed off your report in 7 years, but all judgments, paid tax liens, collections, late payments would have to come off the report in 4 years versus the 7 years that the bill proposes. And any and all adverse debts would have to be removed within 45 days of payment or settlement. And also regarding private student loans, they would have to be removed if the debtor makes 9 consecutive payments on time.
Really? So this is great.
Also
go ahead, Scott.
Bankruptcies would go to 7 years instead of 10 years as well.
So this is great news if it passes. What do you think are the chances, Scott?
Well, I'm not a politician. I don't want to necessarily speculate. It just got introduced. I think in a little bit more in the future, we'll have a better understanding of it. This is something that's brand new. So, but it definitely will be the most aggressive overhaul of the Fair Credit Reporting Act since 2003. Got
it. So exciting news. Hopefully it does, especially, working in the mortgage arena. It would be nice to see some better favorable credit scores for people that have had some challenges with the economy. So, Scott, let's talk about new FICO scoring model.
Yes, FICO, the company that calculates credit scores, is tweaking their system. So this is going to be available commercially in the fall of this year. And it would mean that your credit score will not be affected by unpaid medical bills or any overdue bills that you have already settled. Now, I wouldn't hold your breath because generally it takes several years before lenders gravitate off the older versions to the newer versions and achieve critical mass. The current version right now that's being used was actually implemented in July of 2009, so it's actually 5 years old. And it really takes some time before you start seeing a large volume of lenders moving to the newer systems. And in the mortgage environment, Fannie and Freddie have prevented the entire mortgage industry practically from even being on the now current version of the FICO scoring system. So when the new version comes out in the fall, mortgage lending will be based on a model that's 2 generations old. So we may be having this conversation in 2 or 3 years, and the newest system may not be used in the mortgage environment but may or may not have critical mass in the auto or credit card environment.
Yeah, when I know after the crisis in 2008, can't remember exactly when it happened, but when the actual brackets that you were in had a huge change, whereas 720, as you know, was the highest credit bracket you could be in when it came to mortgage interest rates, and now it's 740. So there was anything under 760 is considered poor credit, whereas before it was 720. So a lot of changes happened there, and the timing was just bad because, again, it was right after the meltdown. What can people do to improve their credit right now, Scott?
The most actionable thing that you can do is to pay down your balances. That's number one. Now, there are a couple other options. One is adding yourself as an authorized user, and what that is if you have a friend or family member that has they have good credit. Let's say they've had a credit card with a high limit but a low balance on it. They've made their payments on time. Just by making a phone call to the credit card company, they can add you as an authorized user, and that credit card will then reflect on your credit report as if it was yours, even the past history. So if they've had it going way back in time, that will go on your report as well. So that's a great way. It's free, doesn't cost you anything. The second option is you can get yourself what's called a credit builder loan. A lot of people don't know about this. It varies from state to state. If you just Google credit builder loan in your state, you can find a bank that will do it. You just give them X amount of dollars. Let's say you give them $1,000. They'll then hold that money, and you make payments on a loan. It's a short-term loan, usually about 6 to 12 months. And at the end of that loan, they will give you the money back, usually with interest. It'll just sit in an interest-bearing account. And the third option would be you can get yourself a secured credit card. You give the bank $500, $1,000. They then give you a credit card with that limit. Just keep your balances very low on that card and just pay it in full each month. Yeah, and I think the authorized user is that is a really easy thing. And if you didn't hear Scott, again, just as a repeat, because I think it's really important, is to get authorized, get on those the cards that are the older accounts. And I can't tell you how many times, Scott, I've had people come in and before talking with me have done things to their credit report. And one thing that they've done that you cannot reverse, as you know, is closing out accounts. And what you have these myths out there that if you got open accounts that you're not using, close them out. The reality is, if they're established accounts, you never want to do that because it has an instant effect because you don't have that history. So going back and getting added to as an authorized user to some of these older accounts can make a huge difference. Sure, that's a very good way, and it doesn't cost anything. So what is credit repair, and what does Prime National do? Can you explain that to my listener, Scott? Absolutely. A lot of people aren't aware what credit repair is. There are a lot of steps that you can take to improve your credit by going to a credit repair company. Prime National actually just recently ranked number 1 in the nation. What Prime National does is disputes the questionable negative items that are on your credit report. It's a 30-day process. We use federal law, the Fair Credit Reporting Act, to initiate disputes with the credit bureaus. And our legal team really goes after with over 20 different disputes per line item. And in 30 days, the credit bureaus reply back to our clients with the results of the investigation and any items that have been removed from the credit report. And if you do have a permanent removal of negative items on your report, that can in turn raise your score. Yes. So, Scott, I've mentioned myths a little bit. What are some other myths out there regarding credit scores? One popular myth is that credit scores and credit reports are the same. Credit reports and credit scores are not at all the same, but people use the two terms interchangeably as if they were, and that's where many errors are made. A credit report is simply a collection of information about a customer, including their personal information, their liabilities, financial-related public records, third-party collection accounts, and inquiries. A credit score is a numeric grade based on most of that information, all but the personal info. And it's a product that's sold along with the credit report, but it is not at all part of the credit report. Yeah, that's a good explanation, and I don't think very few people know that. What about the difference between mortgage report and consumer reports? Can you talk about that? Sure. Well, before I get into that, one more myth that a lot of, and I get this a lot, and this is perhaps maybe the most popular one, is that credit scores are used by employers as part of employment screening. And I just talked about that before bringing you on, Scott, and I think that, people do not realize that. So go ahead. Well, real quick, they can see your credit report, but they cannot see your credit scores at all. They're not even available to employers. So,
but they're looking at the actual information that's on there as far as delinquents, just not your score.
Right. They can be used for employment screening purposes, but they cannot see your actual scores. So.
Yeah, and I didn't know that, Scott. I knew that, their employers are looking at credit, but I always imagine that they're actually looking at the scores, but which would actually be better. The fact that they're looking at the actual credit report, that seems really bad, that they're seeing everything that's happening, not just based on your score.
I guess, it just depends on, I guess every situation's a little bit different,
Sure.
But, that's just the way it is. I'm just here to report.
No, I completely understand. What about the difference between mortgage report and consumer report, Scott?
Yeah. When somebody goes, the average person, when they want to check their credit, they go to a website. You see them advertised all over the place on TV. Sign up for a free trial or pay $20 a month, and you can pull up your credit and you can see what your scores are, and you can monitor your credit. The reality is with those sites is that looking at your credit scores, they're extremely inaccurate when it comes to what your actual score is. And in fact, some of them, there's even a plus or minus 100-point differential. So some people will pull their credit and they'll say, oh, wow, I have, a 740, and they'll go into, then that's what's called a B2C report, business to consumer report. When someone goes in to go to you for a mortgage, you pull a completely different report that people don't even know exists, and it's much more accurate. And they could be up to 100 points less on that report and not even be in the ballpark to qualify. And there's a huge variance there that a lot of people aren't aware of when it comes to that.
And it is really frustrating in my seat when clients, they've pulled their consumer report and they have a lot higher credit score. It's a hard conversation to have, especially when it has such a huge impact on the cost of their mortgage or an impact not being able to get the mortgage at all.
The best site to go to, they only have about a plus or minus 15-point differential, is identityguard.com.
Identityguard.com.
Right. We've tested all of them and we've compared them to the actual mortgage reports, and they're by far the best.
Okay.
Most accurate to go to.
And let's talk about how often your credit score gets updated.
And this is a good one, too, that a lot of people don't realize. It's not as if your credit score is sitting there on a daily basis and the number changes constantly on a daily basis. Your score is only populated when it's actually pulled. So when you pull the report, it gathers data from multiple different sources and then comes up with a score. So it's not just taken on a daily basis and changes whether you look at it or not. It's only populated when you actually pull the report.
I learn something new every time I talk with you, Scott. I didn't realize that.
Well, that's why I'm here.
Yeah. Will you give me that? Give me the best place for if a consumer wants to get a consumer report and not have a hard pull from a lender. What is the best resource out there?
What to go to is identityguard.com. Reason being, they're the most accurate. They're only about a 15-point differential. Credit check totals about 40 points. Privacy Guard's about 25 to 30. So Identity Guard's the best. They're only plus or minus 15 points when it comes to their actual scores.
Okay, perfect. So, Scott, I've got just a second. We've got about 30 seconds left here. A wrap-up for my listeners before we end our time.
Well, if there are any listeners that are looking to improve or fix their credit, tell them to give the show a call. I'll provide them with a free consultation, go over their report with them, and we can go after any negative items that are on their report to obtain a permanent removal, no matter what items are on their report. We'll be here to go over that with them. I appreciate that, Scott. And the show number is 1-855-400-1150. Again, it's 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com. And if you missed any of Scott's segment or you want to listen to previous segments, just go ahead and put in credit repair, bring up his information, and you can listen to all of his segments. Scott, thank you again so much for spending time with me. I appreciate it. And we'll get Victoria to get you booked right back in. Awesome. Always a pleasure. Thanks, Tina. Have a great day. You too. Coming up next to the Money Hour, how do you get top dollar for your home? And is it a seller's market right now? Well, Jen's going to give us the answer. Jennifer Nielsen with Real Living Northwest Realty right here on 1150 AM KKNW after the short break.